everyone to this Open Group webinar, which is one of a series of webinars that we're bringing to you over the coming months. Please do keep an eye on the Open Group website to see what that calendar is. I'm very pleased to say that today's webinar is being brought to us by BizDesign, which is a very active member of the Open Group, and I'm very pleased to have them presenting today. Before I hand over to our speaker today, Remco Blom, I'd just like to have a few housekeeping issues just to keep the event moving forward smoothly. Firstly, we would encourage you to ask questions. I mean, this is one of the main objectives bringing these events to you. There are two ways of submitting a question during the event. You can write it into the text chat facility, or probably this way is to write it into the text QA facility. If you write a question, please can I ask you to address it to either all or all participants, where everyone gets to see all the questions that are being asked. We'll handle all the questions at the end of the presentation. This event is being recorded, so if for any reason you have to leave the event early, or if you experience any local technical difficulties, you'll receive an email with the appropriate URL where you can access that recording. Remco, if you're ready, can I hand over to you to start your presentation?
Sure, thank you very much, Simon. And from my side, a very warm welcome to this webinar on strategy implementation using business models, architecture, and roadmaps. And that this will be a useful event for you to get a better understanding of how you can your role as an enterprise architect in innovation. 1 hour, so I might go a bit fast, but luckily there is a recording to which Simon was referring already, so you can always look back to the recording. Otherwise, you can easily send me an email, and a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about today is also covered in a white paper that you can download from our website. I'll give you a hyperlink to that later in the presentation. You find me more interesting than my 2-week-old daughter. She's obviously here very bored by me. I hope you have a lot of questions, but we try to squeeze everything into the hour because I have new responsibilities at home today. I live in Amersfoort, which is very in the center of the Netherlands. My background is in business, so I studied business in the beautiful city of Nijmegen, and there I entered the field of business process management. A lot of the elements that are part of this process management are also, in a more pure sense, or abstract level, elements that are relevant for enterprise architects. So within BizDesign, we also have an enterprise architecture team, and I joined that team about 8 years ago, during training, lots of consultancy work, and more of the people I work with in enterprise architecture assignments are not only involved in helping the organization to implement this strategy, but also involved in asking questions about, are we actually doing the right thing as an organization? How can we innovate? How can we change our position in the marketplace? How can we move forward with stuff like multi-channel? So the task for enterprise architecture is broadened up, and therefore also business models become a relevant element. Are in governmental organizations, banks, insurance companies, media, so a broad field where I work in. And I work for BizDesign. What we do is we deliver software, consultancy, and training, all from the perspective of best practices. So we are an effective member in the Open Group, both in the Architecture Forum as well as in the Archimate Forum. We endorse and support these open standards. Today will be a lot about the business model canvas from Alexander Osterwalder, which is obviously not an open standard, but you could say a de facto standard for business architecture. I will try to understand, I will try to explain to you the reasons between these three best practices: business model canvas, Archimate, and TOGAF. If you Google on, or if I Google on cheap, on travel, I get the word cheap about 50 times in my results, and the other way around applies as well. If I Google on cheap, I get all sorts of both advertisements as well as relevant search results for traveling. So these two are very much connected. So relevant questions then can be, why are people willing to pay so much for a cup of coffee at Starbucks, let's say $5, and so little for an airline ticket, for instance, with Ryanair, which is a low-cost airline, also $5? I think that's an interesting question. And maybe that also applies for your business, which commodity business, and why are people willing to pay so little for so much value? You, as enterprise architects, are active in the bottom arrow, optimizing implementation and operations, doing things right. If you might be interested in becoming more active in the upper arrow, creating the business model, giving answers to questions about, are we doing the right things? I say you need to do both. So I don't say that optimization is wrong. I say you do that in the context of your business model. So you need to be aware of both, and you need to be able to work on elements to make your organization successful. Success depends. If you are a profit organization, then success is show me the money. If you are in a governmental institute, for instance, you might be more interested in other effects, like social effects or economical effects. And both can be relevant elements and relevant results of your business, and both can be described in a business model. Is work business model an urgent matter? I think it is urgent if you are in newspaper media, for instance, where subscriptions decline, revenue from advertisements down. So they are really in need for a new business model. Maybe the same story, but if you are oil and gas earning platform, that you might still be doing the right thing. So the urgency depends on your business, but it's always important. And you have learned from a time management training, all important matters will become urgent matters at a certain point in time. These tips on this picture, I found it on the web. All the ships refer to bankruptcies, and these refer to the 20 biggest bankruptcies globally ever. And on the left side of your screen, you see a timeline. So roughly the last 10 years, from 2002 down, 17 of the 20 biggest bankruptcies ends in 2001. So the last 11 years was 17 of the biggest bankruptcies. What does this tell you? First, maybe organizations become bigger. I think that's true in a globalizing world. Big organizations are harder to steer. I think there were the big boat is very well chosen, because a big boat is obviously very hard to turn. Another conclusion might be that the life cycle of business models becomes shorter. And that's something that is very interesting for you as well. Which companies existed 10 years ago? You know one? Maybe you have LinkedIn or MySpace? None. None was there on paper. Last.fm was founded, but none was there. None was, let alone that they were successful. Technology goes really fast. So in this chart, you see the adoption of new technology, and the steeper the curve goes up, the faster the adoption goes. So the adopted car took quite time before 50% of the households had a car. And if you had the adoption of, let's say, the internet, it took only 20 years after the internet was there that 50% of households had to internet in the Western world. The euro. 10 years ago, there was no euro. In another 10 years, there is no euro anymore. But this stuff really changes the economy and changes the marketplace. So I would welcome you to the VUCA world. A world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And you need to deal with that also as an enterprise architect. And it's not the strongest of species that survive, or the most intelligent, but those that are most responsive to change. In the world, it's not the product and the specification of the product that makes the difference anymore. It's business model that makes the difference. So it means that with an inferior product, but a business model, you can be more successful than with the superior product and a business model that is not as good. I'm not the only one. This business model stuff is great. I delivered a webinar on this subject, I think it was 4 months ago, and then I searched on Amazon and I had 73,000 hits on business model. A month I had 322,000 results. I think they changed their search algorithm, but it's a huge number, so it's a lot to write about, a lot to read about this subject. And on top, in any result list, is the Business Model Generation book from Alexander Osterwalder, which is the de facto standard for business models and business modeling. But there are a lot of other interesting books, and I would like to point your attention to the Business Model Innovation Factory. There was also a very interesting conference on the subject, and Seeing the White Space is also a very interesting book on this matter. Blue Ocean Strategy can be interesting there as well. They all take a slightly different approach to business models, but they all say it's important to take a look at it, and it really can make a difference in the market today. So what is a business model? This model of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. Is the description important? I think so. I'm sure you can think of stuff that will go wrong, might go wrong, or can go wrong if employees and managers in your organization are not aware of the business model. So if you don't understand the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value, stuff will go wrong. What can go wrong? Firstly, people lack direction, and they need planning of a business model to make the good decisions. So the model sets this direction and supports decision making throughout the organization. So not per se only for strategy, or not per se only for your project portfolio, but also the decision making for every individual in the organization. Things should be directed or should be based on their understanding of the business model. Secondly, there is a communication aspect. Working model brings people together. So all guys touching this elephant, blindfolded, and ask them what elephant. They will all have a different definition of what the elephant is, because they only see parts of the elephant. It's the same thing if I ask a CFO about the business model of organization. They will talk about money. But if I ask marketeers, they will talk about market segments. And if I ask the architect, he will talk about processes and applications. And they are right. But what we need is this broader perspective, get a grip, get a common understanding of a business model. There is the business model campus. What do you describe in a business model? First, the market segments. So you can think about your own organization and try to describe your current business model in this campus and around what is the market that I'm focusing on. Is it mass market, a niche market, diversified, multi-sided, only in one region, or am I globally oriented? And by seeing your market, you select your own competitors. So when it's the market with their Wii, which is a technically inferior product than the Xbox or the PlayStation from Sony by the time, they targeted on women and families, and by that they were in a totally different competition, not with hardcore gamers, but with the fitness school, for instance. Second, you should think about the value proposition that you bring to this market. It's not per se about the products that you deliver to the market, but it's about the view that your customers are experiencing when buying, using, or showing off with the product. Are you helping them to improve their performance, to read, to design, the brand. So what are reasons for people to buy your product? Risk, customization. Are you the newest? Do you improve performance? All sort of elements that are truly your unique selling points are reasons why customers buy and use your product. They get our view to the customer. So we need a logistical concept to put between you and the market. And these are the channels. Do you have your own sales force? Do you have stores, your own or third-party stores? Do you use the web? That sort of questions. In your organization, people talk about product market combinations. Tomorrow, in a meeting, you should ask them about the product phase market channel combination, which is a more complex matrix, obviously. But I think this is true for today. You need to have this insight. So what phase of the buying customer journey the markets are using what channels? So for orientation, customers are using different channels than when buying the product. And when using the product, they use different channels. So you need to have a better insight, a more deep insight in this more complex world where phases and channels are also parts of your product market combination. Then when seeing these channels, you also should think about what type of relation do you want to have with your customers. Is this one? Maybe service, communities, co-creation, all sorts of type of for the relation can be relevant element in your positioning. So the telco gift-gab is the cheapest in the marketplace because they do not have a help desk. Their help desk is the online community of gift-gab users. So all customers of gift-gab are also part of this community online. People can ask questions and get answers from other clients. And why will people do this? Because they get free SMS text messages, for instance. But there is a top 5 of contributors to this forum that do it main for status within the community. So that they're in it for the likes and the kudos, which I think is very cheap for gift-gab. Then, of course, bringing the value proposition to the market, you want to get something back for that. Money, but maybe something else can be interesting for you as well. So how to make money? Do you sell your assets? Or do you license? Or do you deliver it for free and advertise on packaging? So when you Walmart or any other supermarket, it's basically asset sales. So it's they are paying Coca-Cola for the price that they buy in Coca-Cola plus a margin. But if you go to gym, you pay a monthly subscription. Go to the gym using the escalator. This is the market part of the business model. How do we actually make this value? We need to have activities or processes. What's key? So this is not coincidentally a small box. You have to be precise. So what is really key? So if what activity we stop doing, value will be significantly lower for our customers. Consulting for us, knowledge sharing is a very big deal because we cannot differ ourselves from our from contractors in the marketplace. But for other companies, production might be a very important value proposition. For instance, Tata Steel, it's a steel factory. It can be a key activity, marketing, all sorts of activities that are relevant for you when creating value proposition can be key activities. And this is where the hard work is. This is what the organization is doing most of the time. And when doing activities, you need to have resources. These can be obviously human resources, all the people in the organization, but also financial resources or technical resources or tool resources where today Samsung lost a law firm against Apple in the Netherlands. Where you can do it all by yourself doesn't exist anymore. So you have your partners. And partners can be sales partners, which are also on the right side of the business model canvas, but these can also be innovation partners or key suppliers. Espresso, the groups and other vendors that make make these machines are an important partner for them. They do not select groups and other relatively small vendors coincidentally. That's because they can control these smaller firms easier than the large electronic equipment manufacturers. So outside, you see that you have key partners, key activities, and key resources to create your value proposition. And related to these key activities, resources, and partners, their costs. And you consider that whether your organization is cost or value driven, and how important economy of scale is for your organization, and whether flexibilization of costs, for instance, using the cloud is an important aspect. Applies to the Burj Al Arab using EasyJet, because the Burj Al Arab is a 7-star hotel in Dubai. EasyJet doesn't fly on Dubai. Okay, that might be reason one. The reason I'm putting it up here is that EasyJet is the low-cost airline carrier. So very cost-driven. Come to the Burj Al Arab, which is 100% value-driven. Nobody asked what price is of something there because it's all included in the room fee. This is the business model canvas. 9 boxes to describe your business. On the right side, the market. On the left side, the internalization, and on the bottom, the financial perspective. And that gives you an easy understanding of your business model today, but can also be a relevant tool for change, or a relevant tool for merger and acquisition to see where a new company its old company. Next here, Skype, their start focuses on travelers, medium, small-sized businesses, offer them free international calls and video conferencing using self-service. Nobody ever sees someone from Skype. I've never seen an employee from Skype. It's all very simple using the web, currently mobile, for free. I make money using Skype out. The service to call to landlines. Key activities, software development and customer service. Key was the software developers, but also the VoIP software and the infrastructure behind it. They collaborate with local telcos. They buy these minutes for Skype out, device producers to get Skype pre-installed, and also payment providers like PayPal to actually get the money transferred to them. Cost structure, yeah, salary, infrastructure, maybe some marketing costs, but that's minor. So if you never Skype, you get an understanding of what Skype does and what Skype is. Is this a profit organizations? I think not. Very, very good experiences in authority, in hospitals, in cultural institutions. That is because they do deliver value. So if there is a value proposition, there are customers, there are activities, then the business model canvas can be very useful. There are changes because you get the customer is not the one that's paying for the service. So if you look at the business model canvas again, on the right side, you get 2 circles. Firstly, you have the circle that someone is paying, and there's a certain reason for it, and someone else is getting the services for free. Get 2 circles on that side. Some revenues are partly qualitative, but it is still very, very useful, and maybe more useful because these organizations are typically not in there with a business perspective. So you add more value using the canvas in that sort of organizations. So when you use this canvas, you can do it for startups. Lean startup really is an interesting concept, or something to read about on the web. And many startups, many venture capitalists actually require you to not just bring a business plan, but also bring in a business model canvas to pick your idea. We, as Design, apply mostly for in assignments where organizations, departments, or projects are searching new direction. So they see that there are new opportunities, or they see that part of their customers are going away. So they need new directions, and business model canvas helps them to structure this search. We use it for strategy impact assessments. So if you understand your business model today and you do have a new strategy, you can map these two on top of each other, and you see where strategy impacts the business model. And more or less the same technique that we apply for portfolio management. So if you have a set of projects, use the business model canvas to map these projects on top of it and to see where projects overlap, or to see white spaces where you are not doing anything, and you rethink if that it was actually your purpose. And combine application 3 and 4, you can see how well your strategy, or how well your projects help you to implement your strategy. It's actually most important, I think, for today, is that you can use the business model canvas as a communication and implementation tool. Firstly, communication, so you can bring together groups of people around the organization to a common understanding of the business model today, and to get an understanding of a possible future business model. And then use this business model canvas as a starting point for your architecture journey. And you refer back to the team that created the business model by showing your more detailed views in the context of this business model. 6, the front end for lean projects. So in blog I wrote on the 7 applications, I refer to a very lean CDK factory. There must be where this very lean CDK factory, who was so focused on creating B cases, and they were the best in it in the world, that they totally missed that the market is not buying CDs anymore. To use a business model as a starting point for lean, you are not just optimizing, you're also doing the right thing. 7, that's just be smart. So you use the canvas in meetings, and you just sketch it on the back of a napkin, and then you make statements, because you have a broader perspective on the business than the other people in the room that are just oriented on one element. If you want to read more about all these 7 applications of the business model canvas, you can go to businessdesign.com/blog. There is this 7 applications of the business model canvas in more detail. Great, a business model. Great, we have new ideas, and we created our future business model. Then the question is, will a bunch of post-its on a canvas do the job? I think not. So if you look at the canvas of the OV store and the canvas of the store of Apple, it's pretty similar. But it's not similar. The success is totally different. Conclusion here is, there's no such thing as a successful business model. There are only successful businesses. The success is in the implementation. Really like being on the left side of the mountain, with the engaging egos, energy, and excitement. I do understand that after the top, there is the execution, and a lot of execution goes wrong because of the 4 B's: bureaucracy, bosses, budgets, and biases. And it's not on the left side. Success is only after successfully go down from the mountain, and halfway is not when you have the idea. That's only 10, maybe 20%. The rest is in the execution. So it's model relevant for architects. It's creative, but also structured, and I think creative and structured approaches should suit the architect. The implementation is your job, and we position the business model between strategy and implementation. So therefore, it's relevant for you. Innovation and communication are challenges that every architect is facing. So I think that this can be a helpful tool for that as well. EAs don't just stand there waiting for direction, they help to create the direction. It can help you to, point 5, to get in contact with the business in language that they understand and that they like and that they feel connected with, and use that as a starting point to the direction you need and create this vision that you can support with more detailed architecture models. It's come from the field of business process management, which is on the surface. People, processes, and IT don't perform. Fix it. Many clients work in the field of enterprise architecture, which is low on the surface. You don't really see it, but it is there. It's a more logical world where you answer questions about can we optimize the coherent whole of products, processes, organization, information, and applications. But deeper under the surface is the world of business models. Are the right things? Where do we play? How do we create value? Who are our strategic partners? It's about pricing and channels. Under I position culture and motives. So deep under the surface, what are our values? What is our belief? Do we need to change the culture? So you start off with your business model, and you can set people in the organization that fit your business model. But if you are in an existing organization, it would be unwise to create a business model that doesn't fit the culture and motives in your organization, or you have a really hard job. Once you have to understand this deeper world of business models and culture, you can see if your architecture still fits this business model and can optimize the fit between architecture and business model. And you want to change your architecture, maybe that gives you new opportunities for business models as well. Business Model Canvas helps you to connect strategy to implementation, and it's open and universal enough for strategy type of people, but it's also exact enough for process and IT people. So in strategy, people are to methods like blue ocean approaches, 5 forces, or SWOT analysis. And the result of these type of analysis sets the context and the requirements for your business model. So you design your business model. You may want to stress test your business model in a modeling world, where you try to make scenario analysis on what elements of your business model fit certain uncertainties in the future. But eventually you want to go to the market, and you want to see if all hypotheses you are doing are actually true. You go to the marketing and sales material that you need to create. So on the left side of the business model, you need to do some proper implementation in processes and systems. Therefore, you need EA, information planning, and maybe even BPM or business analysis. So back on the left side, you have the world of blue ocean, 5 forces, and SWOT, and you create new alternative business models that you select, and then you make a roadmap to implement these business models using enterprise architecture, information planning, business process modeling, and I position marketing and sales on the bottom, already starting from the very first moment. Because especially if you are in a new business, you need to be close contact with current future customers of this service or product that you are designing, to pivot, iterate, and optimize your business model design, so that you not just stress test your model based on hypothesis, but also on true information out of the marketplace. So now, what to do? Stay tuned for the other half of this webinar, or just download our white paper on the step-by-step way of working using the business model canvas and combine it with Archimate and TOGAF from design.com. So material presented from now on is also in this white paper. I will hyperlink later on again. So if you missed it for now, don't be afraid. What to do? You should combine and integrate the approaches that you know. And then you work from left to right, from top down. So you start with business models, and you start to work from the approaches presented in the white paper. You create strategy, you mobilize the right people, you get a common understanding of the current business model, and you design alternative business model and select the couple of business models that you want to implement. Then you monitor and manage your portfolio of business models. The model approach there is the business model canvas. So you have designed and selected the business model you need. You start your enterprise architecture journey, because of the stuff created in the business model actually is part of your architecture vision. That is part of TOGAF's phase A architecture vision. And you just walk through the step-by-step approach presented to you by the architecture development method in TOGAF 9. And modeling language to use there is Archimate, the open standard modeling language from the Open Group. And we go these 5 steps and explain relations to TOGAF an Archimate. So what you could do as well, you get people in the room and try to combine the perspectives that are in your organization. The market perspective from marketing people, organization perspective at the table. This might be you as an architect, but maybe some other people as well. And there is the perspective at the table as well. The financial, the bottom part. If you have strategy, use the business model canvas approach to get an understanding and mobilize all the people that are relevant. Generate new ideas. The approach we could use there is what Alexander Walter is referring to as the epicentric approach. So for instance, you say, our current business model is not bad, but we see options for change. Just get rid of everything out of our business model except our resources. If that's there, and we try to answer the question, how can we leverage these existing resources we have and that we find we are good at and use it for different value propositions for different customers? Or the other way around, we have a bunch of customers that are happy with us and they trust us and they understand what we are doing and what we are about. What other problems do these customers have and how can we help them solve other problems? Or offer driven. So we have a certain offer, we have a certain position. What other customers are interested, or what are alternative ways to create this value, or finance driven, etc. So this combined with or lending from other markets than your own can be a very good and inspiring way to support a workshop, and that might be for you as well. Based on these new ideas, you work out alternative business models, and you want to select the options. There you need to do some analysis. Probably financial analysis, so cost and revenue calculations. After, behind all post-its on the canvas, you want to do some fact checking, and you want to test pricing models, and you can really do some calculations on the hypothesis you make in the canvas. Outside, you see that you can make scenario-based heat maps where you select alternative futures. That economic crisis is going to start next year, or it's going to become much bigger, or some uncertainties on rations. And based on these uncertainties, you go through all elements of your business model and see how they perform in these circumstances to get an understanding of what elements are strong and stable in your business model and what elements are relatively unstable or unsure. So that can also be interesting information. And then if you have selected, you want to implement. And I would like to emphasize the fact that you should focus on implementing on the right side of the business model. So create journey maps, get customer panels in place, get a launching customer, test pricing models. Because this information you need to see and test if your business will actually work. And you want to do that before you start with Route 2, get your architecture in place, get your processes in place, hire new employees. And Route 1 and 2 are not per se 100% sequential. You can't do stuff in parallel, but you should start from the perspective of the right side of the business model. A business model is the point for your TOGAF journey. So in the case, you have selected a business model, and you use that as the starting point for phase A in the ADM. So it's your architecture vision, truly. If you didn't do this whole business model journey and you didn't do this whole stuff, you can use business model as an alternative way to create a business scenario. So after referring to the business scenario technique, I would say the business model canvas is a more modern approach. Can also be used in phase A and maybe even in phase B to get the right people at the table, create a common vision, and use it as a starting point to derive requirements. But when you derive requirements, you should derive principles from your canvas. Say our customer relationships, very important key account management, could derive from that our in principle is to that customer data is stored centrally. Otherwise, we cannot do that if everybody is storing data on his own mobile device. If our key sources are on certain applications that are very costly, we could say, oh, therefore we derive the principle reuse before cloud, before buy, bore make. Or we serve clients with the channel of their choice if we say that we have a multi-channel strategy. That's principles you can derive directly from your business model canvas. You should think about it. How do we support our business model? So the business layer, the application layer, and the technology layer should be in place to support the working of a profitable business model. Model architecture, you could take a look at Archimate. That all three layers, the business layer, application layer, and technology layer, that perfectly fit to the phases B, C, and D of TOGAF 9, but also motivation, where you could fit in elements like stakeholders, goals, and requirements. And you see the implementation and migration parts of Archimate that help you to not just model your current and future state, but also model the steps, the roadmap that help you to go from one phase to another phase and to get grip on the projects that are there. So it is that you transform your business model, the business model canvas, into an Archimate model. And this is a very powerful starting point with traceable relations back to the business model. It can really kickstart your implementation. So just that you said yellow posts in the field of key activities are business process, and yellow post-its in the domain key partners are actually actors. It means that the actors and these processes, every time you reuse these elements in different views, you can always refer back to this business model. So a team that understands this business model, high-level management, and you want to present your more detailed views to them, you can use the business model as a starting point and then dive into the different post-its in more depth, and that helps them to accept the more detailed models easier. Okay, just a one-on mapping. There's also the stuff on the right top about goals, principles, and requirements that are that require analysis, and of course that is your work as an architect. And as an architect, you can use the canvas to present more detailed models. For instance, delivery concept models, product market channel views, revenue heat maps. You see that what processes in my business are generating what revenues, or more views on the left side, like process views, organization views, application views, collaboration views, improvement views, which are typically more in the field of BAs or lean, or maps, where you show, for instance, your application landscape and show with coloring that applications are very expensive and green applications are very cheap. And also posts then are clickable, so you can dive into these deeper, to more detailed views. So our vision is that you should not just do first order optimization by creating an enterprise architecture model, roadmaps, and implement the model in the real world, but can take a second step and we work on broad improvements and get a broad scope on the business today and in the future by relating your enterprise architecture to the more abstract business model. Design and select alternative business models, create roadmaps to implement these new business models using enterprise architecture, and then implement it in the real operations. And by doing that, enterprise architects really can become innovators and just implementers. And I'm curious to see if you can create your own new business model, not by yourself, but with a team of people. And of course, we are happy to help you with training, consultant services, not just for strategic search of new direction, but also for stress testing your business model or implementing business models. And we use tools to relate your business models to the other standards that are there in the open group, like TOGAF and Archimate, so that you can relate your business model to your strategy, but also implementation in enterprise architecture and process models. And that should you to not become the woolly mammoths in your market. Stay agile and responsive to change. If you want to learn about this, you can download the white paper that explains the step-by-step approach from strategize, mobilize, understand, design, implement your business model using TOGAF and Archimate, and monitor and maintain your portfolio of business models. And there's also a case explained in this white paper, and you find it on our website under downloads and on business model management. I already referred to the blog, 7 applications of the business model canvas. Like it or not like it, feel free to email or just put a comment underneath this blog. You can download version from for a model tool using Archimate that also implemented the business model module, or you can search our website on this subject. Free to contact me directly over email, or for instance using LinkedIn or Twitter. I enjoyed the webinar, and feel free to ask your questions.
That was a really interesting insight into the role of enterprise architecture and enterprise architects in business planning. Looking for some questions to come in. We have got a few, but this is the time now. If you have a question for Remco, please write it in either the chat or the QA facility. We have one here, Remco. This is from Kahit, asking, where do strategy maps and balanced scorecards position in this approach, Remco?
That's a very good question, Kahit. I'm not complete in the approach, so where I position strategy, business models, and implementation, and under C I position 5 forces, Blue Ocean, and SWOT. Could have positioned our balanced scorecard and strategy maps as well. And I think the strategy maps approach is a very interesting one, because that does a job in transforming strategy implementation. I think a balanced scorecard is also doing steps in that direction. But I do think that where you as an enterprise architect try to structure the business model approach from Osterwalder really adds value there, and really can help you to connect it to TOGAF and Archimate as well. And that's something that is quite for strategy maps and the balanced scorecard. So I think you should position strategy maps and balanced scorecard aside SWOT, Blue Ocean, and the 5 forces.
Okay, got a question here about production companies, and asking, do you have samples of business models for production companies?
Sure, there are quite a few of that available. I'm not sure if I can share it with you in soft copy, but there is I created a booklet that is called the Quick Reference Guide for Business Models that explains the business model canvas and comes up with a whole bunch of examples. And there are also a few production companies in there as well. One of the things we see is that a lot of the business models from production companies are moving away from just producing and selling and moving more towards servitization. So not just selling a product and put a margin on top of the production cost, but try to get a continuous revenue stream by moving towards to be more of a service company. And that is a change we see in that field. So there are samples and examples also to be found on the web. If Piotr sends me an email, I can please send him either a hard copy or a soft copy of some examples.
Thank you, Remco. Question here from Ajit asking, is business modeling a part of the business architecture phase of TOGAF ADM?
Ajit, I think you are right, but I think you should do it earlier. So I think it's not part of phase B for business architecture. I think it should be part of phase A, the architecture vision. Get all the relevant stakeholders at the table and get a common understanding of your business model today, as well as of your business model for the future. Not just sets the requirements for the business architecture, but sets the requirements for the architecture as a whole. So that the business model approach should be part of phase A, and of course can also, just like the business scenario technique, be out in phase B for business architecture, or should it be positioned in phase A?
Okay, a few questions here. Question here from Thomas on the QA facility. He asked, how does cultural change impact an existing business model?
I think more the other way around. So the culture is there. So that's the point from where I'm working. So I enter a company and they have a certain culture. They have a certain business model, maybe a set of business models. They do have an architecture and processes in place. So I want to change the business model. I can come up with the ideas. I have to think and consider how whether this organization is ready for the change and whether this organization is capable, culturally spoken, to support this new business model and to execute on this business model. So I think if you have a very innovative business model, this is very new and very different from what a company is doing today, you should not just take into account the profitability of the business model or whether you can build the application supporting the business model. You should also consider whether you have the people in place in your organization and whether you actually be able to hire the right people and fit these people into the organization to actually execute this new business model. So that the culture change affects the business model. It's that the selection of business models should be based on the existing that you have in your organization. It's more the other way around.
Great. We have got quite a few questions coming in now, but just before we move on, got a couple of questions about getting hold of the slides. What's the best way to get hold of a copy of the presentation, Remco?
I think considering whether I'm, send me an email. I think that's the easiest. How many people do we have online, Simon?
Oh, we've got nearly 100, over 150.
Over 50, okay. Yeah, just email. I will make an. Is that the or are you going to email everybody?
Yeah, there's two ways we can do this. If you write down, if you make a note of Remco's email address, you can send it directly to Remco. But if you don't, you all get an email from myself. So if I could copy of the slides, please send me an email, and I'll make sure that we get that through to Remco, and we'll get those sorted out. So that's probably the easiest way.
Okay, thank you, Simon.
So carry on with the questions. We've got a question here from Pedro asking, which industries are leaders in adoption of this BMC EA mixture?
I think that's hard to tell. I do a lot of assignments in the field of where organizations are in desperate need for new business models, which is in media, which is telco, as well as in the field of governmental organizations that want to become more agile or more they need to be steered more on basis of value and cost rather than studies and budgets. So these fields, governmental institutes, media, telco, are leaders in this field. Banking as well, insurance companies. So the field where enterprise architecture already has a position. So if you see the enterprise architecture is just getting started in the field of production, for instance, where we see that it has a long-lasting history already in government and banking and more information-intensive organizations. So quite a broad field, and per se there's one industry that really is leading this this innovation on big change from business models and enterprise architecture perspective.
I had a couple of questions in from Dr. Lee asking about business models. He says business models sound great. And he's asking, how long do you estimate to implement the EA considering a business model?
I think that very much depends. So you have for a very small company or startup, you don't do much of EA. There's not much complexity. There's not much need for change. You just build or buy. You just buy whatever is needed to execute your business model. But if you are in, let's say, a big insurance company, and you change channels from using the intermediary field to wanting a more direct writer. This is a huge change in your business model. So this requires a huge change in your enterprise architecture. So it all depends on how big of the change is in your business model to get an understanding how much of a change there is in the enterprise architecture. And after that, there is the true implementation in the project. It all depends on the organization, the maturity of enterprise architecture, as well as the changes that are made in the business model. So there is no rule of thumb or anything to say about that. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Got time for a couple of more here. From Deepak, what is the what best practice should be followed to interim changes in business model in the context of ADM?
Can you? I'm not sure if I understand the question right. Can you repeat it, or can I write it? Can I read it on the chat?
You can read it on the QA facility, and what is best practice? What best practice should be followed to changes in business module in the context of ADM?
Right, I think I understand. So, the idea is that if you because it's an iterative approach, and I think Deepak is referring to that both the model design is iterative, as well as the approach in TOGAF is iterative. So it's not per se that once there is decided on the business model, then the work on enterprise architecture starts, and only after the architecture is finished, then the implementation starts. It's more iterative. I think that truly is challenging for organizations, especially when the business model changes are big. Then you need a program management or maybe a program portfolio office to get a grip on all changes. I don't have great experience in applying change management stuff using Excel or that sort of stuff. But if you have a proper tooling for enterprise architecture, you can get traceable insight in changing requirements all the way from your business model to your architecture down to your requirements. And if you use that sort of proper enterprise architecture tooling, preferably supporting open standards from the open group, I think that then still it's a tough up, but it's much easier than using nudging these kind of tools. And again, it depends on how big of the project is going on. The tools should be helpful.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. And I think the question here from Lan is, do you have any suggestions on how to define or describe the organizational culture, known as the bottom layer on one of your diagrams?
No, I'm still dealing with that one as well. So I think we do a pretty good job in modeling processes. We do a pretty good job in modeling enterprise architecture. And for since the upcoming of the business model campus and other business model approaches, we are doing a pretty good job in understanding business models and modeling out strategy using concepts and relations. About culture, internal concepts and relations, and some sort of change planning with it. I've never seen it, and even I would be very interested in it, but I don't think that there is a real language for modeling out a culture. what to do then. I think you should go to stuff like the business transformation readiness assessment type of approach that are explained in TOGAF 9, and that's as good as it gets today in the field of modeling.
Well, that's great, Remco. Thank you for that, and I think this is a good time to end this presentation. I'd just like to thank you once again, Remco, for your time and that insightful presentation. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and sending in your questions and participating. We'd just once again encourage you to keep an eye on the Open Group website for future calendar of events that we're bringing to you over the next couple of months. A note, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.